Good evening, my name is Jose. I worked as a truck driver for over 10 years. Throughout my career, several things happened to me that some might classify as paranormal. Traveling hundreds of kilometers of road at night lends itself to all those things. This is one of the stories that marked me the most. I was leaving the city of Tijuana and was going to travel the entire border to reach Tamaulipas. I left around 8 p.m. I wasn't tired as I had just taken a long nap at a truck stop, so I was ready to drive all night. Everything was going as usual. The road was somewhat empty that night with almost no traffic, which I liked. It was already past midnight when out of nowhere I saw a white van that appeared from the bushes behind me. I didn't pay much attention to it since I thought it was someone who had decided to park there to rest a bit. However, it didn't pass me. I had to drive very slowly for obvious reasons. Whenever there was a car behind me, I would signal with my lights for them to pass, and I would move aside. I did the same with this van, but it continued behind me, not wanting to overtake. I thought the driver might be scared, as it was night and perhaps they weren't very experienced in night driving. So I slowed down even more and signaled again for them to pass, but they didn't. They also slowed down to stay behind me. At this point, I was a bit annoyed as I didn't know what that person was playing at, but I decided to ignore it and just keep driving. 2 hours passed and the van was still behind me. I decided to pull over at a gas station to go to the bathroom and buy something to eat, but also to let the van continue its way and stop following me. But when I turned to enter the gas station, the van did the same. It didn't pull into the parking lot but stayed by the side of the road with its lights on. I went into the bathroom and then to the store. When I came out, the van was still there waiting for me. I got very angry and decided to walk over to it to ask the driver what their problem was, whether they were following me or if it was some absurd joke. I knocked on the window, which was completely dark, so I couldn't see inside. I banged on the window and told the driver to open up and not be a coward, to face me and explain what they were doing, but they never opened the window. I shouted that if they continued following me, I would report them to my fellow truckers to deal with them. Suddenly the van sped off, almost running me over. I was still very angry but relieved that they had finally left, allowing me to continue in peace. I got back into my truck and stayed parked for about 30 minutes. After smoking a cigarette, I continued my journey. Everything was normal again, and it was around 3 a.m. when suddenly the same white van appeared out of nowhere right behind me. I thought it must be a joke. I didn't know what to do. It was very annoying. I knew it was something personal since they had been following me for more than 3 hours. They must want something. I decided to head to the next truck stop, which was about an hour and a half away, and park there to ask the other truckers to help me deal with this person in the van. I kept driving patiently with the van right behind me, but then it finally started to pull up next to me. I thought it was going to overtake me, so I slowed down, but the van did the same. The driver's window was right next to mine. I knew the driver was watching me. I honked for them to move away, as it was dangerous to drive so close. But the van started getting closer and closer to my truck. I didn't know what to do. I just kept honking and shouting, asking what the hell they were doing. Then I felt the van hit my truck, and I lost control of the wheel going off the road, crashing through a fence and ending up in the bushes. I wasn't hurt, but the engine had completely shut down. When I tried to start it again, it didn't work. I tried using the radio, but it wasn't working either. I had no cell signal to call for help. To be honest, I was quite scared, being in the middle of nowhere at 3 a.m., disconnected from any help. As if that wasn't enough, I suddenly saw some lights approaching. My heart stopped when I saw it was the same white van that had been following me all night. It parked behind me and turned off the engine and lights. I locked the windows and grabbed my knife, which I always carried with me. The only thing I could think of was that it was some criminal group trying to kidnap me, given the high crime rates. But after about 5 minutes, no one got out. I made the difficult decision to approach the van and try to talk to the driver to make them leave me alone. So I walked slowly to the van with my knife in my pocket, ready to use it, using my phone's flashlight to see as it was pitch dark. We were far from the road, with only the sounds of the night around us. I reached the van and knocked twice, asking, "Hello, can we talk? Please roll down your window." But there was no response. I tried to look inside by pressing my head against the window with my hands around my eyes to see better, but there was absolutely nothing inside. I looked at the back of the van, and there was nothing, just a pile of trash. It seemed the van had been abandoned for a long time. I opened the door and confirmed it was completely empty. I can't explain the horror I felt. I just wondered who had been driving all this time, following me. I ran back to my truck. Before getting in, I saw a figure standing a few meters in front of my truck, visible in the truck's lights. I called out, "Hello?" but got no response. The figure just gestured for me to follow. I hesitated, but did, thinking they might need help. The figure walked very quickly, and I could barely keep up. The place smelled terrible, like dead animals. I kept following the figure until it stopped, staring at a specific spot on the ground. I ran to catch up, but when I got there, the figure was gone. I looked around with my flashlight and called out, but no one appeared. I then looked down at the spot the figure had been staring at and found 3 dead bodies. I couldn't tell how long they had been there, or even if they were male or female. I was shocked and ran back to my truck. The white van was gone, as if it had never been there. I tried starting my truck, and it started on the first try, as if by a miracle. I drove away and called the police to report the bodies. I was driving with tears in my eyes, deeply shaken by what I had just seen. I reached the truck stop where 2 of my coworkers were. When they saw me get out of my truck, they ran over to see what was wrong. I could barely explain what had happened. When I finally did, they stayed with me to keep me company, which calmed me down as I couldn't continue driving in that state. Then I received a call from one of the detectives who had arrived at the site I had indicated. He said they wanted to ask me some questions, and I told them where I was. About half an hour later, 2 detectives arrived. They asked how I had found the bodies and what I was doing in that place. I didn't know how to answer, knowing it was hard to believe, but I told them everything, risking them thinking I was lying or involved in something criminal. When I finished, one of the detectives showed me a photo and asked if it was the van that had followed me all night. I was surprised and said yes. They exchanged glances, and the other detective told me that the van belonged to the 3 young people found dead in the bushes. They were students who had been missing for weeks. Their families had reported them missing after they left for Ciudad Juarez for a journalism project about missing women, but never arrived. They had been killed, and the police needed to ensure I wasn't involved with any criminal groups. I was deeply affected, crying and telling them it was the truth. The detectives told me to calm down and to call if I remembered anything else. After that, they left. I was left deeply shaken, thinking that those young people had chosen me to find their bodies and stop their families from searching. It was the hardest story of my career as a truck driver. Thank you for listening. Before continuing with the next story, I'd appreciate it if you liked this video so I know if you're enjoying our content. Thank you very much. Let's continue. My name is Gerardo. For a long time, I worked as a truck driver for various companies. Now I'm retired at 70, but during my truck driving days, many paranormal things happened to me. This story happened 20 years ago. I was transporting construction material from Nuevo León to the state of Mexico. I had been on the road for 10 hours. Night had fallen, but I liked driving at night because the roads were emptier. I enjoyed the feeling of tranquility and solitude. I was listening to music as usual when suddenly I saw a man hitchhiking by the roadside. I immediately pulled over. Back then, it was common to see people asking for a ride, and I always liked to help. So I asked where he was going, and he said he needed help. His truck had broken down a kilometer ahead, but no one had passed by to help him. I told him to get in, and I'd try to help with my tools. The man got in and sat in the passenger seat, staying very quiet. I asked which company he worked for, but he didn't answer. Then I asked if he was okay, as his clothes were torn and dirty, but he remained silent. We had passed the kilometer he mentioned, and there was no sign of his truck. I asked if it was further ahead, but he just pointed forward, signaling me to keep driving. As time passed, I got nervous because there was no truck by the roadside, and I realized we had returned to the same spot where I had picked him up, kilometer 62. I was stunned. It was impossible to be back there since I had only driven straight. I didn't know what was happening. The man hadn't said a word since getting in my truck, so I decided to pull over and ask him to get out. The man got out without a word, not even thanking me or looking at me. I saw him walk into the bushes and disappear. I didn't want to leave him there, but he had vanished among the shrubs. I didn't know what to do, knowing it wasn't right to leave him alone. At that moment, another truck passed by and stopped in front of me. The driver approached, asking if I had seen a man hitchhiking. I asked how he knew. He said he traveled that road almost daily and that the man I picked up was a trucker who had died in an accident at that very spot. He said for years, the ghost of the trucker had been hitchhiking, and those who gave him a ride disappeared, never seen again. I thanked him for stopping to warn me. He said it was no problem, that we truckers had to look out for each other. He ended by saying it might not be the last time I saw the hitchhiker, and that if I passed by again, I should just ignore him. After that, the man left, and so did I. But to this day, I wonder why the ghost let me go when it had taken others. Another story worth telling happened just before I retired. I was traveling from Mexico City to Cuernavaca with a coworker. We were talking. It was early morning, and I was getting sleepy. So we decided to stop and let my coworker drive while I slept in the cabin. He took the wheel, and I was just lying down when he said, "Gerardo, look, what's that?" I opened the curtain to see an animal walking on two legs approaching our truck. We couldn't see it clearly yet, but it looked strange and creepy. My coworker asked if it was an animal or a person. I told him to drive away because whatever it wasn't good. He tried to start the truck, but we were stuck in mud. He kept trying to move, but the truck wouldn't budge. The creature got closer, taking on the form of an animal, like an ox standing on two legs. It stopped, staring at us. We couldn't take our eyes off it, thinking it would attack. I told my friend to let me try moving the truck, but my attempts were in vain. One of us had to get out to see where to move the tires, but neither wanted to because the creature was still there watching. I decided to get out, but my coworker said not to, that it was waiting for us to get out to attack. I told him not to be superstitious, but he insisted, saying his grandfather, a trucker for decades, had told him if he ever saw an animal on two legs, he should flee and pray. I told him I always carried a religious image my wife put on the dashboard for protection and that we could use it to pray. Without hesitation, he grabbed it and started praying out loud, asking me to join. We recited the Lord's Prayer repeatedly. The creature began to howl so loudly it seemed right next to us. I started sweating and my legs were shaking. I had never been so scared. We kept praying until the creature began walking backward, still watching us but moving away. Its terrifying howls gradually faded until it disappeared. My coworker said it was time, and he quickly got out to guide me. We freed the truck and left as fast as we could. As a trucker, that was the most terrifying and chilling experience I've ever had. My name is Manuel, and I've been transporting goods in my truck for several years. It's a tough and very responsible job, sometimes dangerous, traveling many roads across Mexico, some more hazardous than others due to sharp curves or crime. But this story surpasses those dangers. That night, I had been driving for many hours on a road between Tamaulipas and San Luis Potosi, with many dangerous curves in the mountains. It was a difficult stretch, and as if that wasn't enough, it started to rain heavily. I was inexperienced back then and got nervous. The curves were intimidating, especially at night in the rain. I had been driving for many hours, and sleep started to catch up with me. I knew I had to stop and rest, as it was dangerous to continue, but the next truck stop was far away. I looked for a place to pull over and sleep in the cabin. I parked in front of a hill in the bushes, turned off my truck, and took my umbrella and flashlight to go to the bathroom. When I came back, I saw muddy shoe prints on the passenger side steps and the door slightly open with the interior light on. I had left both doors closed. Fear gripped me, thinking someone had gotten in while I was out. I slowly opened the passenger door, shone my flashlight inside, and asked, "Who's there? You need to get out." No response. I opened the cabin curtain slowly but heard a man's voice crying, "Help her, please help her." I yanked the curtain open, but no one was there. I was trembling but hadn't noticed a detail. An old dirty baby carrier with grass and mud, partly broken, was in the corner above the bed. I was shocked, not knowing how it got there. I threw it out of the truck, feeling uneasy, and started the engine, no longer wanting to sleep. I was very nervous about what had happened and extremely tired, having not slept in nearly 20 hours. Trying to leave the bushes, I hit something. I reversed and got out to check. I saw 3 large concrete crosses, and my truck had knocked down 2. I approached, noticing a small tombstone that read, "Rest in peace, Peña Almanza family," with a photo of a man, woman, and a baby, around a year old. They must have had an accident and died there. It all made sense then. The footprints and the voice I heard were from that man's spirit asking me to save his baby. I started crying, as my wife was pregnant, and I was about to become a father. I couldn't imagine the terrible pain that man felt, trying to protect his child even after death. It's a story that marks you for life. Thank you very much for watching this video. I invite you to subscribe for more terrifying content. Like the video and share it with your friends. More content is coming. Help me spread the fear. Until next time.